Hey guys, welcome back to episode 2, The Misadventures of Nuisance Neighbors, Bonnie and Clod. I really hope you enjoyed the first episode. If you haven't seen episode 1 yet, I highly recommend that you watch it first. You definitely want to keep up with the timeline of events as they happen. I have some good stuff in episode 1, so make sure you go back and check it out. It's only 23 minutes long. Just a reminder, some events in this story are based on speculation and hearsay. All names have been changed, including mine. It's time for me to come out of the closet and introduce myself. I go by Robbie Leon. I'll be making another appearance here in just a few minutes, when I share with you why Clod was mad at me. Let's just say it was my turn to stand my ground with a little gang of cockroaches. Also, I'm not advising anyone to try this at home, as it can be very costly. This video is for entertainment purpose only. It's just my video diary of Bonnie and Clod and their little gang of homies running amok in our neighborhood for 5.5 months, and how my neighbors and I dealt with it. Before we move on, let's go back to Heather's gold truck for a minute. I forgot about this in the first episode. Remember, after BJ's arrest, she sent me a text thanking me for helping get her gold truck back. Well, her little story wasn't quite finished yet. The following morning, she sent me another text. When I opened the thread, the first thing I saw was a picture of her car. It had severe side impact damage to the front fender on the passenger side. At first, I thought she was involved in an accident somewhere here in town. She followed up with a text explaining that she and her boyfriend had a serious fight that morning. So he jumps in her gold truck and tries to leave. In desperation to stop him, she jumped in her car and cut him off at the pass. I'm assuming they live somewhere with only one way in, one way out. Well, he wasn't going to let a little thing like her roadblock slow him down. So he just put the pedal to the metal and rammed through her car and went on the run. I responded to Heather with some words of sympathy and wished her well. Once again, she reported her truck stolen. The last I heard, she was still looking for the gold. Here we see Officer Wade in his black riding boots, telling the deputies about what he saw on the video I gave him when Clod fled the deputies after being caught receiving and in possession of a stolen vehicle. He points my way and with his right arm demonstrates the angle that Clod was caught running home on my video. He's the officer that was sitting on the corner with a few of my neighbors gathered around when I showed up with the video that got this show started. Officer Wade was patrolling nearby when the call from the deputy came in for assistance. After the deputy's description of Clod and the direction Clod ran, Wade had a good idea where to start looking. I had a little chat with Officer Wade during this event. He mentioned that the garage was full of stolen items. They also discovered tools used for breaking and entering into homes and autos. He also mentioned that the living conditions in the house was disgusting. It was hard to walk down the hallways without tripping over boxes, bags of miscellaneous tools, and equipment. All of the bedroom walls and doors had fist holes, and also there was days-old food laying around piled up everywhere inside. But the most disgusting part was the dog poop. The dogs would poop in the house and nobody would pick it up. Well, the homies would step in the piles and track the dog poop all over the house onto the tile floors and into the carpets. It was as bad as you could possibly imagine. From the outside, the house doesn't look bad at all. Clod's parents pay for all utilities and a gardener to care for the front yard only. They also pay for a pool service company to maintain the swimming pool. Although the swimming pool looked immaculate, the rest of the backyard was overgrown and looked like a junkyard. Anyway, before Officer Wade left, he gave me his cell phone number. Wade was assigned to the Auto Theft and Recovery Task Force unit. Since I had home field advantage, we were both in a position to help each other. Wade told me he was going to patrol our area and circle back when he could. The deputies are finally wrapping up their business at Bonnie and Clod's home. Bonnie, Clod, and BJ are getting ready to head downtown. Italian homeboy Nico is doing a drive-by and gets flashed by the deputy's cruiser. Now that Bonnie, Clod, and BJ are on their way to spend a Saturday night in the Pokey, let's see how the next 24 hours went. Within minutes after the last deputy left, Nico arrives to survey the damage. After getting the all clear from Nico, the first wave of brave homies back up to the garage and start loading the back of their car. The homies are in high-octane panic mode. In their minds, the clock is ticking and they are trying to salvage as much as they can, as fast as they can. I've got my popcorn out and I'm watching the little gang of cockroaches scramble around like cockroaches do when you turn the lights on. The way I see it, they are moving out and I'm happy to see them go. Well, I'm thinking, take it all and get the hell out of here. Once they have all they can handle in the car, the last thing to take is the stolen motor scooter. The last time I saw the scooter was a few weeks ago when someone took it out for a spin after dark and parked it inside the house. And just like that, they were gone. Officer Wade did circle back and parked around the corner just out of sight of the homies rushing in. He made contact with the little Kia as they were leaving our neighborhood, but he couldn't find enough to make an arrest and release them. I'm sure the little Kia put the word out to stay away. It's not the last time we'll see the little Kia. I'll have more about it at the end of the next episode. Anyway, the last car I saw for the night dropped off one of the homies and split. After getting a good night's sleep in lockup, Bonnie, Clod, and BJ are back home and back in business. Things were fairly quiet most of the morning and early afternoon. The neighbors and I are beginning to process the fact that our justice system, that is supposed to protect us, actually gave our neighborhood the middle finger and a cold slap in the face. The only question on our minds right now is why didn't they at least spend the weekend, appear before a judge Monday morning, and at minimum be ordered to check into a drug rehab facility? If they suffer no consequences, where is the incentive for them to stop and clean up? Everything we heard on the news about the current administration's soft on crime policies was now on full display in our own neighborhood. Anyway, around 2:45 that afternoon, we finally see our first signs of life when a couple of homies stopped by to return BJ's small bag of auto break-in tools used to steal this green Ford Explorer. While we watch BJ decide what to do with this Explorer, and also watch how new stolen arrivals are treated, I want to take you behind the scenes of this story and tell you how my neighbors and I prepared for the long haul. One of my neighbors, Mary, was in contact with Bonnie's mother, Jenna. Mary would keep Jenna up to speed on Bonnie's activities in our neighborhood. In return, Jenna would give Mary updates on Bonnie and Clod while they were in lockup. At this point, I'm just starting to hear the name Jenna floating around in our neighborhood conversations. Not knowing the level of communication between Miss Bonnie and her mother Jenna, I decided to leave Jenna in the good hands of Mary. Jenna told Mary Miss Bonnie was out a few hours after booking last night, and more than likely hitched a ride back to the motel to wait for Clod. The boys did spend the night, and everyone returned home around 9 a.m. Sunday morning. Also, my good neighbor Wilma had a line of communication with Clod's mom. Wilma became very upset with Clod's parents and wanted to cut off communication with him. I asked Wilma to hang in there for me and keep gathering information. Wilma was able to expose the lies told to the neighbors and I about the eviction process. Wilma and I were friends with Clod's Aunt Lizzie and Uncle Ryan, who lived in the house long before Clod moved in. After passing away at the young age of 52, Lizzie's organ donation saved the lives of 5 people. Lizzie was honored with a beautiful fluorograph picture writing on the Donate Life float in the Tournament of Roses parade in Pasadena. Lizzie, the sister of Clod's mom, would have been ashamed of both Clod and his parents. The father of Lizzie and Clod's mom owned the house, and after Lizzie passed away, Lizzie's father gave control of the house to Clod's mom, and it was all downhill from there for our neighborhood. Another one of my awesome neighbors owns and operates a barbershop. One of his clients, Deputy Cruz, already familiar with the catch and release program, encouraged the neighbors and I to keep calling the sheriff department whenever we saw anything. Outside of beating each other with ball bats, stabbing or shooting at each other, there wasn't a whole lot that our men wearing the badge could do. Along with the barber's connection to Deputy Cruz and my connection to Officer Wade, the neighbors and I were in a position to cause as much chaos as we could to Bonnie and Clod's little operation. Knowing that we couldn't rely on the justice system, our little team was settling in and preparing for the long haul, hoping to catch another break somewhere like I did with Heather's gold truck, and catching Clod running into his house with the sheriff deputy hot on his tail. My neighbors and I started collecting license plate numbers. I used my laptop notepad to store my lists. I would enter dates, times, and the description of all vehicles visiting Bonnie and Clod's home. With a good pair of binoculars, I was able to see all of the plate numbers parked in Clod's driveway. Also, with a good set of binoculars, Mary's husband Chester would send me plate numbers of vehicles that I couldn't see parked out on the street. Wilma and other neighbors were also sending me plate numbers that they collected. After collecting a plate number, I would then run it through Officer Wade. One of the problems that we ran into was most of these stolen vehicles were fresh out of someone's driveway, street, or parking lot and haven't been reported stolen yet, as in this case with the green Ford Explorer. Right now, I believe BJ has finally made his decision. After being arrested 2 times in 5 days, he decides to close down the chop shop at Bonnie and Clod's home and move this part of his operation elsewhere. This little gang specialized in older pickups and SUVs. I can only imagine there's a huge demand for these parts in the black market and on Craigslist. I never saw the green Explorer after this. However, I did receive a text from Officer Wade a few weeks later saying that the green Ford Explorer was finally reported stolen and recovered, with no mention of arrest. Now that BJ's chop shop is closed, we're going to turn our attention to what I believe is a new operation setting up in Bonnie and Clod's home. I'm also going to share some shenanigans witnessed by the neighbors and I on a daily basis. About an hour after BJ delivered his green Ford Explorer to a different location and hitched a ride home, Nico is back. Nico has a very special delivery for Clod. After escorting Clod to the trash can, Nico and Clod unload all of the contents from Nico's trunk. I learned over time that you don't hide the pills that your mother gives you deep inside the trunk or hidden behind a panel somewhere inside the car. Once all of the items have been removed from the trunk, Clod and Nico finally reach the candy. Keep an eye on Clod's left hand as he heads toward the trash can to drop off what appears to be a plastic bottle. Clod is holding the small package of candy delivered by Nico high and tight as he runs into his house. Well, now that they've replaced what they lost during last night's raid, they can finally feed their heads. Meanwhile, Nico is left all alone to put his junk back in his trunk. 45 minutes later and 24 hours after Bonnie, Clod, and BJ received their new set of silver bracelets and an invite to have a seat on the curb, I hear a lot of thumping and bumping going on across the street, so I take a look just to see what the hell that boy's up to now. I see Clod slinging trash and trash cans around like he's 10 feet tall and chasing rabbits. Try not to pay too much attention to BJ on the front porch. I believe that Nico's candy wasn't the kind of pills that make you small. I'll go ask Bonnie in a future episode. I think she'll know. Clod is feeling no pain as the smoking caterpillar leads him around, and he's in the mood to do some good neighbor housekeeping. It's time to get the can on the curb and ready for tomorrow's pickup. Well, tomorrow is green can day. The only thing allowed in the green cans are table scraps, grass clippings, twigs, and leaves. Notice how full his regular trash can is as he runs around the yard collecting more trash to put in the green can. In order to keep up with the amount of trash that they are generating, he has to use the green can to stay caught up. And if he misses a week, he would run around the following week stuffing his overflow trash into the neighbors' cans in the wee hours of the morning. After noticing that he's stuffing things into the green can that doesn't belong, I decide to make sure that he's not stuffing his trash in my can. After checking my can, I notice a couple of homies walking up the street heading in Clod's direction. While we wait for the homies to walk in, let's take a little closer look at BJ, after I told you not to. I'll let you be the judge. Well, I'm convinced that the boys are tripping and kicking off a 3 or 4 day run with very little sleep. The thieving cockroaches are alive and ready for another round of pillaging and plundering. Just for kicks, I decide to hang around inside my garage a few minutes as the homies arrive. I believe I made Clod and BJ a little paranoid, or they're just being stingy and they turned a couple away. As I turn my back on BJ and head into my house, shutting the garage door behind me, I can't tell if BJ is spacing out or giving me the evil eye. One final note on Nico. Not sure what happened to the boy, but he faded out and I never saw him again. The amount of trash that they were generating was very puzzling to me. Well, I like puzzles, so I decided to start one, and this was the first piece that I set into place. Having the home field advantage, I was able to see a lot more than the neighbors, so I took it upon myself to try to solve our little problem. This new quest that I'm starting was all on me. Not knowing how it was going to turn out, I decided to keep it to myself. I didn't want to get the neighbors' hopes up just in case I failed. You know, Bonnie and Clod must be very poor negotiators. Hell, if I'm giving up my house to a gang, I'd at least want a loaner car as part of the deal. It's been 2 days since Nico delivered his candy package to Clod, and it looks like Clod is starting to lag a little bit. As they leave on foot, heading to the motel, Miss Bonnie turns off her designated light on the way out. All of the lights are out, nobody's home. A lot of their homies rent rooms at the motel. The motel is less than a 10-minute walk from our street, and it's where most of the stolen goods are collected and later transferred back to Bonnie and Clod's home for storage and distribution. A few hours after Bonnie unscrews her light, these two punks show up in Freddy's car. All of the homies borrow Freddy's car, everyone except Bonnie and Clod. More about Freddy and his car here in just a few minutes. I guess these punks missed the memo about Bonnie's light code. After realizing nobody's home, they leave. My neighbor Ted called and asked if I seen these two punks. I sent him the video. On their way out, the passenger yells some very unkind words and gives Ted the middle finger. Ted is a retired senior and one of the kindest gentlemen you could ever meet. It looks like the judicial system isn't the only one giving our neighborhood the middle finger. Well, Bonnie and Clod have found a ride home from the motel, along with more stolen items to be warehoused. It's now day 3 since Nico's candy drop, and the crew is going strong and still falling down the rabbit hole. After unloading the bicycle and all of the stolen items from the trunk, it looks like BJ and the little Toyota girl still have some business to take care of. From now on, I will be referring to this white Toyota as the Toyota girls. It's another piece of my puzzle. I just don't know it yet. Check out Clod as he tries real hard to look like a dork by saluting the Toyota girl. Later that evening, someone looking for a lawn blower answered Bonnie's ad on Craigslist. Clod is waiting and meets the customer in the driveway. Now it's time for Clod to close the deal. The customer wants to make sure it runs before whipping out his cash. After several attempts to start the little engine, Clod gives up and lets the customer try. The customer also makes several attempts and he fails. Right now, it looks like the deal might be falling apart and Clod is sweating it. Once Clod's teacher, BJ, realizes that Clod is struggling to close the deal, he decides to come out and give his student a hand. As BJ walks down the walkway, he's yelling, "You have to choke it." Well, BJ finally takes over, chokes it a few times, and with one pull, it fires right up. It looks like BJ has a talent for starting all kinds of engines, big and small. Watch Clod's reaction as BJ closes the deal. As you can see, Clod is overwhelmed with relief. Now that BJ has done his job, he heads back into the house, leaving his pet student Clod to collect the cash and with a handshake, send another happy customer on his way with the stolen leaf blower. Now, we finally get to see why Clod was mad at me. 3 days after the lawn blower sale, I finish up some early morning business on my laptop and decide to take a quick peek outside from my laptop Ring app. The moment I turn my camera on, I catch this car flipping a quick U-turn in the street in front of my house. I noticed the driver tapping his brakes and slowing down. He was stopping just off screen to the left. Something just didn't feel right. That style of U-turn wasn't normal in our neighborhood, considering that most of my neighbors are laid-back, middle-aged, hard-working people and retired seniors. This U-turn had homie written all over it. So I went outside to take a look. As I step out of my garage, I see Billy Bob running from a mailbox on the passenger side of his car. He was parked in the middle of the street with his driver door open. As he ran around the backside of his car toward the open driver door, I noticed a few pieces of mail in his hand. "What are you doing?" After yelling at him, he jumped in his car and split. After checking with a few of the nobody-home neighbors down the street and not knowing what to expect next, I returned to my laptop and decided to watch for a bit. About 12 minutes later, Freddy's car pulls up and parks in front of my RV. I watched for a few minutes. Then I start wondering if the driver might be fooling around the front compartments of my RV just out of my view. I walk outside hoping that my presence would spook him off. At this point, I'm starting to feel like the driver is trying to taunt me. He wasn't moving. By now, all of my neighbors are packing guns. My good neighbor, the barber, had a confrontation with Freddy, the owner of this car, and Clod a few weeks earlier. The barber came home from work late one evening and decided to sit in his pickup truck with his headlights on, shining towards Clod's house. This was the barber's way of letting the homies know that he wasn't intimidated and he was also watching. Well, Freddy and Clod thought they were going to be badasses. As they approached the barber, Clod yelled, "What the hell are you looking at?" Clod gets really brave when he has backup. Well, I guess the clowns didn't know that the barber had a concealed carry permit. The barber, being cool and calm, raised his shirt a bit and exposed his weapon. Well, the boys went from being badasses to babbling idiots, apologized, and left. I learned later that Freddy was taken into custody at the motel and extradited back to a big city a few hours north of our town on murder charges. Well, now it's my turn to take a stand. I bring my little Beretta out of hiding and fake like I'm calling 911. Once the driver noticed that I was packing, he decided to move. That convinced me that he was watching me the whole time and taunting me. Now that he's flipped around, I recognize it's Billy Bob. He must have went back to the motel and swapped cars and returned in Freddy's car. I guess in Billy Bob's mind, the neighbors and I are supposed to be intimidated whenever Freddy's car shows up. Well, the boy underestimated our neighborhood. I believe Billy Bob is still thinking he wants to be a badass, but doesn't quite know how to handle his current situation. Well, he finally makes a wise decision and he parks it. As Billy Bob gets out of Freddy's car, I'm thinking, pull your pants up, boy, nobody wants to see your ass. Anyway, Billy Bob keeps a very close eye on me as he quietly walks to Claude's front door and waits to be let in. It was definitely a very uncomfortable moment for me. It's the first time that I've ever been involved in this type of a situation, and I didn't like it. But I wasn't going to lay down and let these little punks run over me either. Now that I've connected Billy Bob, the mailbox thief, to Claude's house, another piece of my little puzzle just fell into place. Not knowing what to expect next, I keep my camera rolling. I was surprised to see Claude walking across the street heading in my direction. Well, now it looks like I'm getting ready to face the wrath of Clod. Clod is coming to defend the honor of Billy Bob. Unsure of Clod's mental state of mind, I hustle my wife off to the bedroom. While my wife calls 911 for real, I prepare for the worst case scenario. Let's check out the gator neck face mask that Clod wears to cover all the fentanyl sores on his face. Other than making you stupid, one of the other side effects of fentanyl are the sores that it creates on their faces. Miss Bonnie does a fair job covering her sores with makeup. Now, let's watch Clod in real time. Clod's wrath turned out to be nothing more than just a whimper. I was actually relieved that he chose to walk away. The deputies were on their way, and there was no need to escalate things any further. Anyway, Clod looks bewildered as he walks away. Billy Bob left before the deputies arrived, and it was the last time I ever saw the boy. After Billy Bob leaves, Clod begins to hose down his driveway. I believe this was Clod's way of trying to call me out. The deputies arrive within 15 minutes after my wife called 911 and makes contact with Clod. Clod starts rambling to the deputies about how tired he is of the neighbors picking on his friend. I captured a little bit of audio while talking with the deputies. Let's listen to the deputy as he describes his encounter with Clod.
He had sores just billowing out of that basement. That guy was a real dick when I tried to talk to him. I waited. He wouldn't even stop what he was doing, look at me in the eye and talk to me in any reasonable manner.
I also learned during this conversation that the COVID eviction restrictions had expired. Clod's mother used the restrictions as an excuse to the neighbors and I as one of many reasons why she couldn't evict them. Well, Mama was just caught in another lie. I told the rest of the neighbors, and as you can imagine, they were livid. I really enjoyed chatting with these deputies. They were both really cool guys. And now, you know why Clod was mad at me. I really hope you guys enjoyed episode 1 and 2. If you are seeing this video for the first time and you are interested in following my story, please make sure you subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and hit the notification bell. I still have plenty of shenanigans to share and a few more pieces of my puzzle to set in place in order to finish my little masterpiece. So make sure you come back and see episode 3. I still have a lot of fun stuff ahead. Anyway, that's all I have for now, but don't go anywhere just yet. I still have scenes from future episodes to share with you starting right now. Thank you for watching, and may God bless you.
Yo.